In this lesson, we're going to begin by setting up our title for the first part of our video. Okay, so we're just right here where we left off from our last lesson. And the way that I'm going to be working is just going back and forth between the elements we have in the infographic split comp and this main comp. So let's go into the infographic split, and you can see if I just zoom in by holding Alt and using the wheel on my mouse, that I have this kind of title piece right here. So I'm going to use this over in our main Coral infographic. So I'm going to just draw a box around that to select all of those, and then we'll copy and paste it into our other comps. So hit Control C with all of those selected to copy it. Come back out here to your main Coral infographic and hit Control V to paste it. So if I just put this kind of right in the middle and then hold Shift and scale this up, you can see that that's about the size, probably pretty close to the size that we want for this. Now you'll notice something else, that it's getting really blurry, and that's because it's a vector graphic and it doesn't have continuously rasterized turned on. So if you're using a vector graphic and not a pixel-based graphic like you would get out of Photoshop, then you have the option to turn on a switch that'll make this all clear again. So just come down here and I'm going to click those two buttons, and that's going to make everything clear back up. So that looks much better. Now what I'm going to do is be using a few effects that are going to be for text. So you'll notice that this is all on one layer right now, and it's not a text layer. So I actually need to kind of rebuild this to be able to use it. So sometimes you're going to run into this. Now the effect that I'm going to be doing for the reefs and an overview are going to be different. So I want them on their own layers, but they don't necessarily have to be text layers. But since I'm going to be rebuilding them in After Effects, we'll just go ahead and put them on text layers because we need a text layer for the state of. So let's go ahead and start that. I'm just going to come up here, grab my text tool. It's going to open up my character and paragraph panels, and we'll just type in the words, the state of. Now I already came in here and kind of changed up my font options so that they would match what we have right here. But basically what I was working with originally in Illustrator when I designed this was Adobe Garamond for this serif font and PFDIN compressed for this sans serif font. So that's what we will be working with in After Effects as well. So I'm just going to scale this down a bit to make it smaller, and you can see that the tracking has been adjusted to make that just kind of fit with that original a little bit better as well. So once you have that set up, now let's go ahead and set up our text for the reefs. So I'll go ahead and grab my text tool again. We'll just type in the reefs. And I actually don't have caps lock turned on to make it capitalized like that. I've simply selected this option for all caps here. So that also makes it go just a little bit faster if you want to switch back and forth. You don't have to retype things every time. And we're going to change this to PFDIN. And the stance of this is not regular, it's actually extra bold. So I'll go ahead and choose, or excuse me, extra black. So we'll choose that and scale this up just like this. And you'll notice that the tracking is pretty big on this one too, but not quite as much. So we'll make that a little bit tighter and just keep pulling that in till we get it about the same size. Just right in here. That looks pretty close. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then let's just use this piece that we already made for the state of to copy it and use it for an overview. So I can just select that we already typed, hit Control D to duplicate it. Then we'll just pull it down here, grab our text tool and type in the words, an overview. And let's make it just a bit smaller so that it fits this size a bit better, just like that. Okay, so now we can get rid of this Illustrator text. We don't need that anymore. So I'll just select it and delete it. And now we have all of these on their own text layers, and we're able to use any kind of effects we want with these now, just because Illustrator doesn't allow you to do that doesn't mean that you can't work around it. So let's scale this line up a bit just so it matches with what we had before in our Illustrator project. I'm just holding Shift to scale it proportionately. And I want to make sure that this is right in the middle of my comp as well. So I'm going to turn on Title Action Safe. So you can just come down here and go to your Choose Grid and Guide options and turn that on. Let's line up our text so that it fits within this side and this side of those lines there. So I'm just going to scale that down a bit, holding Shift to do it proportionately. And I'm going to pull it down, holding Shift to make it go in a straight line until that middle dot on the outside of that bounding box lines up with the tick mark. And that's just a helpful mark just to let you know where that exact center is. Then let's grab our rule line and pull this down and make sure that it is right in the center as well. Maybe scale it in just a bit. And then let's bring this down a bit too. Just right there in the middle. This can probably move up a bit. And that's looking pretty good. So now what I want to do is add a text effect to the word the state of. And the only way that I could use a text effect in After Effects for this is to have that After Effects text layer. So what we'll do is open up our Effects and Presets panel. So you can just come up here to Window, go to Effects and Presets, and the effect we're going to be using is Word Processor. So go ahead and type that in. And that's going to come up for you. So just with your current time indicator there at the beginning of the comp, we'll go ahead and grab Word Processor and drop it onto that bit of text. And now when you scrub, you can see it appears that it's being typed on to our composition. So this looks pretty good. The only problem is that this particular effect gives you a slightly odd result in that if I come over here to the second keyframe, the slider is sitting at 54.95, or if I go all the way to the side, 55. So this 55 that it always defaults to is sometimes too little for your slider and sometimes too much. And the way to tell is if you're at the keyframe, you're past it, and you don't have all your letters, you need to increase the value of that slider. But if you scrub in between and none of your letters start to disappear, you need a little bit less. So that appears to be the case with me. If I scrub backwards from that keyframe, my letters aren't starting to disappear. So I'm going to scrub backwards until they do. Let's just go a little further. Just going slowly, right about there. So if I move forward to, let's see, about 12:59, that's when it looks like the F is completely there. So I'm going to go ahead and set another keyframe and delete that keyframe that it defaulted to. And now I have a much better representation with my keyframes of what it takes to reveal that text. So now if I want to change the timing, make it reveal over a longer amount of time, I have that option, and that keyframe represents the correct value now. So now let's go ahead and set up an animation for our word, the reefs. So what I want to do with this is I want it to look like it kind of swings in, almost like it was on kind of a hinge or something. So to do that, we're going to need to make it into a 3D layer. So just come up here to where you see the reefs and turn on that 3D box. Now, right now, the way that it's going to be swinging is from the bottom, just because that's where the anchor point is. So I'm going to grab my pan behind anchor point tool and move that anchor point up to the top. So now it'll swing in and look a little bit more like it's being affected by gravity. So we'll grab our rotation tool and just come right over here on the X axis and twirl this up towards us until it's perfectly flat. Then let's go ahead and set a keyframe for that. So we'll toggle this down, or you can just select the layer and hit the R key to bring that up. And that's going to give you an orientation value of 272 degrees. So we'll go ahead and set a keyframe there. And then let's just move forward a bit and we'll rotate this back down the other direction. So it looks like it swings down, goes a little bit past 0, and back this way. And I have found that a great value for this for me is just to make it stop at 30 degrees. So what happens then is you have a pretty nice even number to get some follow through. So it can look like it's kind of swinging back and forth until it comes to a stop. So right now we have it kind of at the full height, then it's going to swing down to 30, and then we need to come forward from that keyframe and make it come back towards us. And I found that a great way to make it look realistic is simply to cut that degree in half. So half of 30 is going to be 15. But to make it go back towards us, we need to make it a negative 15. So go ahead and type in negative 15, hit enter, and it will convert that from a negative 15 to the actual degree. Since there's 360 degrees in a rotation, it'll convert that to 345, which is 15 degrees less than 360. So it's just a little bit easier to do the math by just putting a negative sign in front of that. So you can see that kind of swings down there, and then we'll go past that keyframe a bit, and then half of 15 is going to be about 7, so we'll just type in a 7, this time not negative, because you kind of go back and forth between based on whether you're behind that line of at 0 or ahead of it. And then half of 7, let's just say 3, and so we'll put a negative 3, and then you can basically go back to 0, or you could put, you know, a 1, 5 in there if you really wanted it to have a lot. So we'll just put a 0 there. So I wasn't really paying attention to the distance between these keyframes. It's all pretty close to the same. So I'm going to zoom in here, and let's just kind of regulate this a bit. So right now, I'm just going to use the page down key with my current time indicator at the very first key to count the keyframes in between this first set. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just in between the first set. It looks like 4 again. That's 5, 4, and 4. So one thing you can do is make them get a little bit shorter, because you don't need quite as much time to get it back when the degrees are getting smaller and smaller. So maybe this first one, we could do 6. So we can pull this forward, then we can do 5. Pull that forward a bit, then we'll do 4. I'll just select all of these and drag them forward there. 3. And 2. So you can see how this changes the look a little bit. I'll do a RAM preview. I just hit the 0 key on my number pad, and just to crop it so we're only watching this part here, I'm going to hit the N key, and we'll just watch that through. So that looks pretty good. If you wanted to push it just one more step ahead, you could select all your keyframes and change them to Easy Ease. So I'm going to come up here, and we'll come up to Animation, choose Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease. And that's just going to make this look even more realistic, just kind of easing from one to the other. We have one more piece of text to animate, this bit right here, but we're running out of time a little bit, so I'm going to come back and do that in the next lesson, and then we'll also just adjust the timing of this so that it's not all happening at the same time, and it coincides a little bit better with what our narrator is saying. So right now, this is all happening before the narrator even begins to speak. So we'll just kind of get all of that tweaked up with the timing and this last transition in our next lesson.